Good morning, Judy. Can you hear me okay?
Morning, Jason. Arthur here.
Good morning, Arthur. How are you, sir?
I'm good, thank you.
Good to
I'm
hear.
gonna, I think I'm supposed to be first up on the agenda.
Yeah, Isaac sent out an updated handout. I got to copy it over to this other computer. Let's see here. I think part of the problem is that there wasn't an actual agenda.
Yeah, no, my slides got moved to about page 31, but it was after stuff that had already been discussed, I think.
Yeah, so let's
I don't
see.
know. You confirm with Commissioner Fishman.
Yeah, when we get started, I know if you look at that packet that was distributed, we got through all of item 5. And so, yeah, item 6 would be up next. Now, I'm going to defer to the commissioners, so we'll see
Yeah.
what they say.
Okay. Well, I'm prepared. I'm going to briefly share my screen to just get my slide up and then make sure it's there, if you don't mind.
Okay, let me allow you that. Let's see here. You should have the ability
There we go.
to share your screen. I can see it.
So, okay, there you go. Okay, so I'll bail from here. All right, everything's in order. I'll talk to you.
Now that is the same PowerPoint presentation I have with the PDF. So whether you're sharing or I'm sharing, I think we're going to be just fine. It's the same.
Yeah, I added a slide and I
Okay,
changed
so
the date. Yeah.
okay,
Sorry.
at that time, I'll just turn it over to you. I'll keep you as co-host.
Okay.
So we won't have to reestablish that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. You ready to kick this rodeo off?
Yep, I've got 2 minutes showing left on my clock here, so we'll get started then. You get to say the pledge this morning, by the way.
I do.
Yes, you do.
Commissioner Byrd thinks I don't sound very good when I recite the pledge.
Screw Bird.
Maybe we
I
should
didn't get
make
any
him sing
reaction
it.
yet. Where is he?
Maybe
Where
we
is
should make
Bird?
him. We'll make him sing the pledge.
Okay, that's good. Let's conspire. Jeff sings the pledge this morning.
Oh, that'll get his attention. Well, I just want to say good morning to all the staff out there. Thank you for tuning in. This is, I think, hopefully the last part, right? Part two of the workshop. And I think we're all excited to kind of share our goals and objectives for the next, as the chair corrected me, the next 22 months, not 2 years. So I guess we should change the title, Mr. Chair, to the 22-month work plan.
22-month work plan. Okay, we're at 9:30. Do we have all of our commissioners on board here?
I'm here, Mr. Chair.
Okay, terrific. Good morning, Commissioner.
Good morning.
Jeff, are you here? Well, so much for our sneaky plan. Okay, we're back to Joe. You got the pledge this morning.
All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico and the Zia symbol of perfect friendship among united cultures.
Mr. Chairman, good morning. This is Jason.
Oh, good morning, Jason.
I see
have you
that
on.
Commissioner Byrd is logged in. He may have stepped away. I do not see Commissioner Hall with us just yet. However, I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Oh, yeah.
Also,
No,
if one thing, just maybe a point of clarification, on the agenda, we didn't have the Pledge of Allegiance or the salute the flag, but I think it's important. So if we need to put that, probably just need to put a friendly reminder to ourselves that to make sure we add it, because that's not what's on the agenda, but we're okay. Just wanted to at least recognize that real quick.
yeah.
We
No,
are
I
live
was
on
a
YouTube
little-
and
Go
record.
ahead.
I was just going to say that we are live on YouTube as well. So there's probably individuals that are watching out in the audience via the YouTube link.
So I want to apologize for yesterday. I was disappeared by lots of personal stuff, and I really did not get back on some emails preparing for this meeting and just getting everyone together on it. So that's on me. But today I can focus. So Commissioner Byrd, welcome.
Thank you. I was just muted. I forgot to hit *6.
Okay, and we're still waiting on Commissioner Hall, but I believe we should just get started here. And as we discussed at the open meeting, what I wanted to do today was, well, I'll just do a quick overview of how I see this happening. I want to have Arthur O'Donnell do his presentation of the work they had done on the grid roadmap. And that will kind of give us a big picture that we're working within. Second, after that, Commissioner Maestas had circulated the notes from our last meeting. And we want to do a quick overview to be sure everybody has plugged into what the key messages were from the last meeting. So that'd be number 2. Number 3, I'd like each of the commissioners to talk about what they want to accomplish from that list that's kind of, that's top of mind for them. And we can discuss those and be sure we're on the same page. And from there, hopefully do some divvying up of work between commissioners, talk about the resources we need to get that work done, be sure that we're checking in with staff and that we're not throwing a bunch of stuff on their plate that it's just not realistic to believe we can get done. And from there, after we've divvied that up, I don't think we need to come up with work plans today, but we can set a time for each of the commissioners and key folks to come back with a work plan in the next couple of weeks to kind of pull it all together. So if that feels okay to folks, that's how I'm going to proceed.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, no objections, then Arthur, you on board?
I am, Commissioner. Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, fellow staff, and all the ships at sea, thank you very much for the opportunity to present the current state of the grid modernization roadmap. And I'm going to share my screen and pull up, hopefully, these slides, and can everyone see them?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Thank you. As you recall, in November, staff from the Energy, Minerals, and Natural Resources Department made a presentation to the Commission's business meeting to introduce the concept of the grid modernization roadmap. And so I won't repeat everything that they said, but just to give you a reminder is that this came out of legislation last year, HB 233, that directed MNER to convene a advisory group. And this advisory group consists of volunteers on a technical policy expert, academics, folks representing the utilities, the Sandia Labs, and other folks that are really interested in the future of energy, to develop action items for consideration. And over the course of 4 months, from September until early January, we drafted white papers that can serve as resource documents for some of the actions that are proposed. And I'll go through those as briefly as possible, because there were, in the end, 11 action items, and arguably 9 of them implicate the Public Regulatory Commission. There is no requirement that the PRC act on these things, but I will say that the Commission has already identified a couple of them for early action, and no doubt you will see some pressure from the legislature, the governor's office, and interested parties to move ahead. Now, the roadmap is looking at a 10-year time frame, so it's not that this stuff has to happen overnight, or would it happen overnight, even if you put all your best efforts into it. The important thing for me is to recognize the lesson of our last work plan session, which is that the Commission staff is overwhelmed with existing work, that anything new that comes onto the plate is going to have to find a priority. And so it is actually kind of my recommendation that the Commission look at these action items and decide what its priorities are, given the resource constraints and the time frame that we're looking at over the next 22 months in order to set up the next Commission for perhaps action on some of these items. And I recommend that because we are already seeing legislation that addresses some of these areas. And you know, I'll point out a couple of them, like the Community Solar Act, which does not give the Commission any resources in order to do an awful lot of work in a very short time frame. And you want to head that off. I think that the best way to head that kind of action off is to be able to say to the legislature, look, we've reviewed all of these action items. these are our priorities. Help us meet these priorities. And, you know, I'm here to help you do that. Public Service New Mexico has already announced a $450 million grid modernization initiative, hoping to take advantage of an aspect of HB 233, which allows utilities to come to the commission with applications for funding and rate reimbursement for grid modernization. So the commission has to expect that you're going to see applications on several of these fronts. On a more positive side, this grid modernization effort, even though New Mexico wasn't directly involved in it, it aligns very well with national efforts, especially the recently publicized National Association of Regulatory Utility Commissioners, National Association of State Energy Officers, Clean Energy Planning Initiative that involved 14 states and Puerto Rico. I looked through those documents and found several corollaries to some of the actions that New Mexico is contemplating, and some really good reference and process documents to help the commission think through how it wants to proceed on some of these fronts. Okay, so with that, I'll point out the several areas of work papers that would implicate or require PRC action. And these should be familiar to you: advanced metering infrastructure, updating the interconnection manual, approving advanced inverters and the international standards, in particular IEEE 1547/2018, that allow for more reliability at the distribution level and perhaps to increase the deployment of distributed energy resources, energy storage, integrated resource planning, distribution resource planning on the horizon, rate design for distributed energy resources. Also of note were chapters dealing with transmission planning and regional transmission organization thinking, right? They don't directly implicate or require PRC, but the PRC really ought to understand what's happening on those fronts. And finally, community solar. As I mentioned, legislation SB 84 and AB 106 are working their way through the legislature and could muscle their way into the commission's priorities unless you get a handle on them. And there was a long discussion about the legislation on Wednesday, so I won't go into that. I'm going to briefly talk about what the recommendations from the white papers are, the status of that issue in New Mexico, and really just leave it for that. We can have a discussion afterwards, or you can ask questions however you want to go ahead with it. This is the most boiled down version. I also provided a slightly longer narrative in the packet of information for the workshop today, but also links to all of the white papers. If you want to go deeper into each white paper, which are 10 to 15 to 20 pages each, as I said, they can provide useful resource documents because they also contain bibliographies and citations to what's happening around the country. So first off, advanced metering and infrastructure. The advisory committee is recommending that all utilities invest in AMI and other smart grid technology with a whole suite of capabilities. These include smart meters, right, to really kind of look at time of use for energy consumption for customers, and advanced features and services that the grid can provide. Some of these that are rise to the top are giving the utility better visibility into their system so they can pinpoint exactly where faults and outages occur, and also to be able to direct their resources to fix those problems faster. The status of this is that most rural co-ops and the city of Farmington have installed AMI, but the 3 investor-owned utilities have not. The PRC has rejected PNM's AMI proposals twice for lack of cost effectiveness. That doesn't mean the end of the story. SPS has told the commission in a recent meeting that it's planning on adding AMI applications. So this is on the horizon, and I think that the commission should expect to have to deal with this. If there's no questions, I'll just move on to the second. Okay. Updating the interconnection manual. The recommendation is that the rules and manuals should be updated because they are vintage 2008. In the interim, many things have changed. The Federal Energy Regulatory Commission has updated what it calls its Small Generator Interconnection Protocols, or SGIP. New technologies have come into the marketplace, in particular energy storage and microgrids. A lot of customer demand for interconnection is beginning to impinge on the utilities in New Mexico's ability to actually process interconnection applications, particularly, as we heard in a workshop yesterday, in Public Service New Mexico territory, where they have several significantly sized areas where they say that their circuits are completely full at capacity and they cannot interconnect more. Now, the Commission has already identified this as an initiative. In January, the PRC issued a notice of inquiry seeking comments on interconnection policies with the potential to update the rules and the manual. And as I said, a workshop was held yesterday. And just from my point of view, it was a very productive workshop with really good presentations and a lot of ideas for the Commission to proceed on. At this point, I'll leave it on that, but I expect that we'll probably see a NOPR, a Notice of Proposed Rulemaking, later on this year with some activity. We're beginning to formulate stakeholder groups, much like the Technical Advisory Group for the roadmap, in order to help the Commission decide how it wants to proceed on this front. Okay. Very linked to this is adoption of advanced inverter functionality. Inverters are, of course, the link between behind the meter or customer sited generation or EV charging and the utilities grid. Another big development over the past 5 to 7 years has been the recognition that the technology that was traditionally used actually caused problems for reliability on the network, in that the previous version of IEEE 1547, which is the international standard, required that generation behind the meter and the inverters would shut off in cases of disruptions to voltage or frequency or other kinds of disruptions on the distribution grid, when what you really want is for those facilities to be able to continue to operate, to provide local service, but not endanger utility workers who are trying to restore service. So this is a very technical component of it, and we have essentially grafted the update in the interconnection manual with advanced inverters and the adoption of IEEE 1547 as a component and phase of that initiative. What we see now is that many states around the country are adopting the new standards and putting them into place, in particular California, Hawaii, Oregon, Colorado, Arizona, Minnesota. So New Mexico would be right in line with the rest of the industry in moving toward this. So that again was subject to yesterday's workshop, and I would really point people to the presentation from Michael Ropp, who is with Sandia Laboratories, who explained what the issues are and how advanced inverter capabilities can help resolve those issues. Deployment of energy storage. The document in the white paper actually goes pretty far in terms of wanting the Commission to establish incentive programs that encourage use of energy storage paired with PV, and setting procurement goals, right? Essentially, additionally, 100 megawatts per year through 2040, a total of 2,000 megawatts. Now, the status of this is that New Mexico's PRC has recently approved 300 megawatts of solar associated with battery storage as part of the replacement resource portfolio for the San Juan Generating Station. There is a bill before the legislature now that would provide tax credits for storage development and for installation at the residential and small commercial level. The Commission should be careful about targets on a siloed technology, because it could well reduce your flexibility in dealing with resource needs in the future, especially through an integrated resource plan, which we'll talk about. So while you know, I think some people know that I used to work for the California Public Utilities Commission, and my first job was to help shepherd a storage mandate, which required the utilities in that state to build, buy, or procure 1,300 megawatts of storage by 2024. I don't necessarily favor those kind of siloed solicitations for New Mexico because your circumstances are different. California wanted to jumpstart the market. The market has taken off and storage is being developed nationally and internationally at unheard of levels. And so to tie yourself into a specific target might reduce your flexibility in terms of being able to address needs with other technologies that are also coming into the market. We can discuss that if there's an interest. Integrated resource planning. This is another area that the Commission has identified and is beginning to look into. The main problem, as you've heard many times, is that the existing IRP requirements do not have any teeth or lead necessarily to a procurement policy. The proceedings have gotten to be very complicated, as you're seeing with the current the PNM IRP application. And so it really requires a revisiting of the rule, because the rule doesn't necessarily take into effect all the new technologies, all the new possible solutions that the state has in its toolkit. And also in my reading of the current rule, it almost always leads to the same outcome in terms of the resources that are identified, right? And that is natural gas-fired peakers and additional baseload capacity. And because of the Energy Transition Act, and because of the nature of the changing dynamics in the grid, those are not your best solutions anymore. And the IRP doesn't really allow for full consideration of those. So that's my opinion. The Commission can take that as it will. The status is that we're looking at a potential rulemaking, perhaps this year, to revisit the language of the IRP and some of the processes that are involved in it. And I know that Commissioner Hall is very much interested in directly tying IRP to procurement. Okay. I'm going to stop there. These are the technical aspects of the white papers that I think are closer on the horizon for the Commission to consider. And some of the next set of ideas and white papers are a little bit further down the road. Any questions so far?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Commissioner Mastis.
if I may, thanks, Arthur. Thanks for all your work serving as the PRC liaison, especially to the grid modernization efforts headed by MNERD. Have got a couple of questions. You and I have talked about the grant program. That's a prominent element of the grid modernization statute that was passed a couple of years ago, but it has not been funded. My eyes are glazing over all the pieces of legislation, but I haven't seen any legislation that capitalizes that grant program. Are you aware of any efforts to appropriate money for the grant program, and what's the risk of it continuing to remain there unfunded?
Well, right now, there's very little meat to that proposal that was built into the legislation. And part of the implementation plan from MNERD is to continue getting stakeholder advice on exactly what that grant program should be, what kinds of projects should be eligible, and how to ask for the money. So I would anticipate that any budget appropriation would have to defer into next year, after this fiscal year, when the legislature can revisit that and appropriate money in a budget, because I just don't see that happening in FY 2021.
Last question, Mr. Chair. Arthur, in your previous slide, you mentioned that PNM plans to invest about $450 million in grid modernization. I sat in on the presentation yesterday about the approximate investment required on all the feeder lines that are at capacity or near capacity. But I have a broader question. We know PNM, for example, the biggest IOU in the state, plans to join the Western Energy Imbalance Market. What impact, if any, will that have on us going forward in terms of grid modernization planning? Will that alleviate any of the needs? How will that change the posture of grid modernization planning, especially as it pertains to the PNM service area with their plan to join WEAM?
Okay. I'll make a distinction between the energy market that the Western Energy Imbalance Market represents, which is a wholesale, short-term energy imbalance, to kind of make sure that your needs that come up on a short order, and we're talking about an hour ahead or 5 minutes ahead, can be met without having to fire up a new gas turbine, right? So that you can go to the market to do that. And if you have excess in a short time, that you can sell that to other states that may be experiencing some short-term shortfalls. The energy imbalance market also envisions a day-ahead market, which would broaden the number of transactions and the type of transactions. But this is at the wholesale level. Grid modernization, as being envisioned by MNERD and the roadmap, is really mostly about distribution. And distribution necessarily implicates additional distributed energy generation at the customer level, whether it's residential customer or small commercial level. Just for the sake of categorizing it, we'll call it below 10 megawatt installations that will, over time, despite any best efforts, is going to require upgrades to the system. All right, so that's where the spending is going to come in. And it's going to come in reconductoring some distribution lines, in adding sensors and monitoring equipment so that you have better visibility, in maybe changing the ratio of how the utility meets its need from relying wholly on generation resources and wholesale markets to relying more on demand response and customer inputs, right? And those are policy decisions that you have to make. No matter what New Mexico does, there's going to be a price tag attached to that. And it could be a substantial price tag. One utility on the East Coast, Duke Energy, is planning a $1.6 billion investment in its distribution system. The California utilities, both for system hardening and system modernization, are looking at several $billion of investment. Now, New Mexico, of course, doesn't have as large of a system, but we can anticipate that there's going to be a price tag. And that's pretty much all I can say. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Yeah, that's all I had, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Maestas. Were you done with your presentation, Art?
No, I have 3 more items, right?
That's...
And I'll go through them pretty quickly, because this one, distributed resource planning, is exactly what we were just talking about, which is, where do you want that investment to go? I won't go into this. There are currently no requirements for utility distribution planning, but this can help affect the longer run markets that the commission wants to see, okay? Rate design is, while it's treated as an individual idea here, it really is going to be an issue in almost everything that you do. The GMAG members are recommending not any particular rate design like time of use rates or decoupling or anything, but to have a process to look into these various rate designs so that the commission is prepared when they come before it. And I was just invited to an AEE seminar on rate design for distributed energy that's going to be held in March or April. So maybe I'll have some more information for you after we have that seminar. Okay. Other action items that are not directly in your portfolio: transmission planning, right? Because it's a federal function, but you have to approve the money. When the utilities come to you and say, FERC has approved these upgrades or these transmission lines and we need the money to do it. And RTO task force, there are elements in the state that really think all of New Mexico utilities should be part of an independent system operator or an RTO, which is a transmission operator that also operates markets. I would just say watch this very carefully. And finally, action 10, which is couched as programs for low to moderate income customers, but almost all the discussion in the white paper is about community solar. We referenced the legislation that's on the horizon, may or may not get acted on this year, but this is not an issue that's going to go away. Finally, I'm just going to show you a development timeline, which is along the grid here. We've had stakeholder engagement, we've drafted white papers, we've had public presentation of the early white papers. We are now in the February to March time period in which the MNERD is accepting comments and proposed edits on the white papers, and a final roadmap is expected in April or May. I think at that time, it would be good for the commission to have thought about its priorities and to be able to input, because an implementation group is going to be formed at that time to try and move these ideas along. And as I referenced at the outset, it would be really good for the commission to be able to articulate what its priorities are, and that will help stave off undue pressure to move in areas in which you're really just not ready or have the resources to move on. So that's my presentation. And again, if there are any other questions from commissioners or staff, I'm happy to try and answer them.
So commissioners, any questions, thoughts? Commissioner Hall? You're on mute.
Yeah, well, no, I don't really have any questions right now. I need to just sort of let all this sink in. There's a lot there. It sounds like from the very last thing you said, we probably would be well off making some responses to the during this technical and public review period on the roadmap, just to protect ourselves from any undue pressure, as he says. But otherwise, I just need to absorb it. It's a lot there.
Following up on that theme, I had called in over to Secretary Cottrell Probst over at MNERD and talked to her briefly about all the legislation and the requirements that the administrative requirements it placed on the PRC, and made a suggestion to her and asked her if she would be willing to co-sponsor with me a memorial that created a study group that looked at PRC workload and PRC demands coming out of new legislation and existing legislation, because I just think it's just not well understood. She thought about it for a couple of days, but declined, which was disappointing, but at least she gave it some consideration. And we don't have to have a memorial to convene some people to, put together a picture for folks of how overwhelming some of these legislative requirements can become. And so anyway, I just wanted to alert everybody that I'd had that discussion with Secretary Probst, and that's where we are at this point in time. And Arthur, I guess the question for you is, do you believe this comment process on the roadmap development might be a good place to address that?
I think that it would be fair for the commission to try and educate the people that are involved in the roadmap process as to what your resource and staff constraints are. Mm-hmm. And of course, I'm here to help and to be a bridge in that effort. I would not recommend moving down paths for which the commission is just not able to really kind of reach a conclusion. Right, that's not productive. It's not where we want to go. I mean, I see that the ones that I put at the top, the interconnection policy, are very doable. Right, IRP is very doable and actually important. So everything else needs to find its place in the order. And I'm here to help you identify kind of how to do that and how to make it work and to bring that message out to the roadmap and to anybody else that's necessary.
And just to clarify, the reason that I called Secretary Probst is that particularly the House is not friendly to memorials this session. And I figured memorial would be a waste of time and effort if we didn't have MNERD and the governor's office support. So it's something that personally I'm not planning to follow up on without that support. I just think it'll be a drain on resources. Perhaps in our comments here in the next month to a month and a half, we can address some of those issues because there are some huge demands that the legislature is placing on us that maybe aren't, that we need to prioritize. I'll just put it that way and have some reality around what we can actually do and what's going to get us the most bang for the buck.
If there's nothing else, thank you very much. I'll stop sharing now and turn the screen back over to Jason. And I'm always available for questions and for any help that you need.
Thank you, Arthur. So we have a summary from the last meeting of some of the key points that came up. And actually what I'd like to do is, since it was Jonas who put this together for us, Commissioner Maestas' assistant, perhaps we can just go through a quick overview of this to be sure we're all on board with some of the key points that came up from our last meeting. Commissioner Maestas. Whoops, he may be on a little break. Hey, Jonas.
Hey, Chair Fishman. I'm happy to go through this list if you'd like me to.
Yeah, why don't we do that, and when Joe gets back. Oh,
Sure.
Here he comes. Or that's you. Okay. Go ahead, Jonas.
Okay. So the point of this list is just to really try to consolidate everything that was proposed at over the last couple meetings, and I did also include items from Arthur's presentation, although he wasn't able to present it till today. I know the next document is the minutes from Isaac and Carl, and they also underlined throughout that document the action items, and that was helpful in developing this list. Really, the first 1, 2, 3 items are introductory and summaries of the conversations that were had. Yes, more resources are needed and would be very helpful, but unlikely to be appropriated this year or next year, at least not in the amounts that are needed to do the work.
Jonas, one thing I should, we don't necessarily have to name every item, just kind of the key ones. And I'm inviting commissioners, by the way, if something comes up that you need to comment on, feel free to break in and so we can just quick cover it.
Well, Mr. Chair, then, with respect to needing more resources, I'm currently trying to solicit more externs from the law school, third year law students to help wherever they can. The first thing that comes to my mind is rulemakings. So in terms of resources.
I'm going to modify that instruction a little bit just to keep a little more flow. Is as Jonas goes through an item, wait till he completes item 1 before we comment instead of waiting for each little sub item.
Sure.
And wait till he does the complete number and then bring in our comments. Okay. I think that'll move it along a little faster. Okay. Thanks, Jonas. Thanks. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. That's about all I have on the first item. The second item, statutory changes, obviously, PRC can't control those, and we're halfway through this legislative session. The commission took action on Wednesday on a number of bills, but that's just there because there was a lot of talk about statutory changes that were needed or preferred, and I wanted to include them on this list here. The third item, it is just the statement that, given those resource and statutory constraints, I think there's a consensus that things still need to get done in the next 22 months now that we have. So then I start really on number 4, getting down to where work can be done. And these are where I tried to identify actionable items that, as the commission talked about last week, should be assigned a responsible party or team, given a deadline, maybe some deliverables. So that's what I'm jumping into now. Reducing the vacancy rate. Jason gave a really good presentation on Wednesday on the critical hiring plan. That is something that you can measure and see if it's achieved. Obtaining office space, obviously, that was also discussed on Wednesday and seems like the agency's on a good path towards. Developing a plan for post-pandemic locational work needs is something that should be assigned, I believe, and seemed like it could be doable without additional resources. Enhancing utility regulatory intelligence was a really broadly supported idea. And I know there was some step on that already. Isaac distributed LexisNexis information to folks, but I know a lot of people think there's more to do. Moving down to pursuing free expertise, and on to page 2. I think that's great that there is an interest in externships. So I put that on the list. I did a couple externships in law school, really cool program. And just think, yeah, that the commission could benefit a lot from that. And that was echoed by a number of folks.
If you're on page 2, it's not showing on my screen.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not controlling the screen, Commissioner Hall.
Oh, I am? I'm not.
No, I'm not sure who the host is.
Jason,
This
are
is
you
Jason. I'm showing page 2 of the notes. Are you?
Oh, now I do have it.
You are.
How did that happen? Okay, I'm glad.
Okay. And there was a lot of discussion about workflow improvements. I think that's something that could be explored. And I don't know who would make that proposal. Again, I'm just running down the list. But hearing from folks who have been with the agency for a long time talk about how workflow processes that happened in the past and would seem to be really beneficial to bring them back. As a new employee, item I do agree with that was widely discussed. Improved orientation for new employees and commissioners. I have a background in policy, but I don't have much of a background in regulatory policy, and think that a lot of new staff would benefit from that. There was an item I think raised by both legal division and OGC, Jay, to formalize that relationship. I don't think that would take any resources. Maybe I'm speaking out of school, but it sounds like it would just take sitting down and getting on the same page. And then there are a few other items there on that list of what the commission can do to help now without any extra resources. The next item 5 is a recognition of the incredibly high workload that's already on folks' plates. That list that was provided by the hearing examiners was really enlightening and sobering and should be considered. But commissioners did discuss how, any changes that might be able to be made to tackle that workload more efficiently. And I think those are areas to be explored. They might not be, achievable action items, but at least the research and exploration on them is actionable. And then 6, I agree with you, Commissioner Hall. I think, and I think most folks through these work plans or workshops have emphasize that rulemakings really are the place where there's a lot of work to be done, where, you know, ideally there might be a way to do it that doesn't put an enormous burden on staff, but also to really just prioritize, like Arthur was saying in his last presentation, which rulemakings need to get done. And I tried to categorize those based on my impressions of the conversations and the presentations into what's necessary to align with new statutes or new federal regulations or changes in technology even, including transportation electrification, which is from a 2019 statute, decoupling, which was in 2019 statute in a 2019 bill. I know Jason raised a couple items in his presentation that were high priorities, and I thought I understood them to be necessary. Sorry, I'm moving on to page 3 now. Those two that Jason identified in his presentation were the motor carrier rules and the midnight state rule. And again, if I'm wrong on any of these, you know, I'm not the expert. I was just the note taker here and want staff and commissioners to correct me if I've misclassified or put something here I shouldn't, or you know, had an oversight and didn't add something I should have. And then I think, you know, there's what's necessary in terms of rulemaking, and then there's also what's active and what needs to be closed out on that list. I just put wrapping up active rulemakings. I know there was also a comment at one point about could certain active rulemakings be abandoned if they haven't progressed in a little while, if they kind of been dropped, but still technically active. I don't have insight on that, but I know that was a comment that was mentioned. And then C is, you know, which rulemakings could ease staff workload. And I think Arthur talked about how the IRP requirements and rule, like we all saw from the discussion on Wednesday, is not working out as smoothly as is hoped. And hopefully revising that rule would make staff's job clearer and I don't want to say easier, but at least clearer, which should make a job easier if you more clearly understand it and your role is more well defined. And then other rulemakings, I kind of threw it in D, and those capture a lot of what Arthur has raised tied to the GMAG group and that roadmap. And then finally, just I think there might be, and this is just my perspective, and I think catching some comments that were made during the workshops, that the current rulemaking process of having a workshop and then a draft rule and then a public comment kind of duplicates a step. It kind of duplicates that public comment step. And I think there's been a lot of talk about getting contract assistance or assistance from national experts on drafting rules, and then putting those out for comment. And hopefully that would make the process more efficient in getting through a lot of these rulemakings that just have to be done. So that's my list. I hope I captured everything. If I didn't, you know, I'm happy to add to it and send it back out. But thanks for giving me the opportunity to run through that.
Thank you, Jonas. Really appreciate it. So commissioners, are there any things that you would like to, just after that overview, to add, and or if it's really steps out, delete from this list? So I'll just open up the floor for that.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Hall.
Well, I first want to say thanks to Jonas, because this is a really good, comprehensive document. And I'm glad to see that it covers sort of long range and short range kind of concepts. In the rulemaking area, I don't like the idea of just stopping in the midst of a rulemaking and leaving it unfinished. I don't know where that idea came from, but if there's some that are on this list that we just want to drop, I don't think we should do that myself, unless there's no longer a need for the rule, then we could issue an order stating so. But otherwise, it doesn't seem like a very good idea. If there's a rule that we started that needs to be in place, we should finish it. And if there's some sort of, if one of these rules is like that, I'd like to understand and maybe try to help move it along. I'll volunteer to do that, but I don't think that would be good for our reputation or good for our working practices to start a rule and then not finish it. So, as I mentioned earlier, I'm actively trying to get third-year law school externs to try to help with rulemakings where it would be appropriate. I want to make sure that we spend whatever money we have for contracting in the most effective way, which generally is in rate cases. So I don't know that we should rush to spend money on that. I don't think we lack expertise in our agency on how to conduct rulemakings. We just lack persons to carry out the work, and law students could operate under supervision of people in general counsel's office, for example, or under me when I'm working on some, because I'm a lawyer. They have to be supervised by lawyers, but that supervision is really pretty non-demanding from the supervisor's standpoint. It has to be weekly, but if you've got a student, and many of the students are not, fresh out of college, they're, when they went to law school, they're more grown up. If you got somebody who knows how to work, it can work very well. So I just leave it at that for now.
And Commissioner Hall, actually, I will echo your sentiments about discontinuing rulemakings. I think there's been a history of that happening in the past, and we saw it in the NRRI report. People had frustrations with rulemakings and processes that were started and then just abandoned midstream. And if it's something that's worth doing, it's worth following through.
Yeah.
And the challenge might be more finding the resources. I'll chime in that my assistant Brian is an attorney. He can supervise.
Yes, he can.
A third-year person, Jonas.
Perfect, Jonas.
Same thing. And what I'd suggest is we have assistants who are capable that I think it makes sense to bring them into these processes and use them as resources to get this work done.
Totally, I agree.
They haven't been utilized in the past.
Yeah.
So Brian and Jonas, are if you have any comments on that, are you about to throw me out the door, assassinate me, or is this stuff that you feel makes sense?
I'm a resource waiting to be used, Chairman.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'd say I agree with Brian's statement there. I'm a resource to be used. I am curious about, if there's a more effective way to kind of consolidate the effort of recruiting externs, maybe through OGC, through a uniform. The law school has a service called Connect, where employers can post listings for potential externs. And I, think that it would be helpful if the commissioners and OGC worked together to develop something like that, or to develop a posting for that service to recruit in a concerted effort, instead of me putting a posting up to be a mentor, or to be a mentor, or a supervising attorney, or Brian doing it on his own, or Commissioner Hall doing it on her own. I just think bringing it all together would be helpful.
I agree completely.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts from commissioners on that?
Only to say that in the past, we used that system, but it was from my office. I think general counsel I think they were too busy to even be involved in that, and they were concerned about the time draw of supervising externs. But I think I think that wouldn't be a bad way to advertise it. It might be more attractive, although we didn't lack for applicants, but I think it can't hurt. And then, if general counsel didn't want to do a lot of supervising, then we three could, but they may feel differently now. I don't know. We'll have to talk about it with them, but definitely that is the right system to use. And I know what you're talking about. And I think it would could make it more attractive. I think it could. So good thought.
And do we have someone from general counsel to comment on this?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Well, according to my notes, the workshop for February the 5th, 2021, our general counsel, the first statement that he made is understaffing issue in his department. That is the first statement that he made. And then he talked about we're working on big cases. And matters of workshops or matters of training, specifically matters that can be taking care of other staff, it gets rolled over to general counsel. And he said it's distracting. So I don't know how to put that message across to everyone. Our general counsel, the first statement he made is they are understaffed to take on another task. That's all I have, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I guess as the discussion that we've been having, the way I view it is it's a way to bring on resources where the commissioners can and their assistants can directly work on these efforts without creating or minimizing the amount of additional workload that's created for the existing general counsel OGC staff.
Mr.
And
Chairman?
that's how I'm viewing it. I think that's how Commissioner Hall is viewing it.
Yes.
Yes,
I am.
Okay. And Mike, what are your thoughts?
So sorry, I didn't want to cut in on something. No, I think that's really the better approach to it, is because I think everybody's hitting on points that are valid and are concerns of mine in the past, which is in the past, I think there were under different commissioners, there were basically, let's put it, efforts to have externs, be introduced into the general counsel's office without really a focus on whether we needed somebody or not, and which meant then we ended up trying to find something for somebody to do rather than identifying a way that somebody could be used in advance and assigning them to that. So to the degree that the commissioners, as you were just saying, have specific needs that, you think that it's having somebody from the law school would help, like on a rulemaking or something of that nature, that's good. Having somebody just come in and, the nature of the work that we do principally are the adjudications, and, bringing somebody in from the law school, a law student means most of the time that we end up just having to sort of split time aside from what we're doing to educate somebody and explain what's going on. And it kind of just really just duplicating work and effort, because it's kind of hard to give the work to somebody else to say, read this brief and summarize. We need to read the things ourselves, because there's already enough steps in the process, but with cases going to hearing examiners, then coming to us, and then coming to you, and that introducing another person in that staircase is really just not really, I think, productive. I had actually said in the past that I thought staff, legal division might be more in need of externs than the general counsel's office. And I think utilizing externs in both places, I think would be advantageous to the agency. I know legal division right now is still understaffed. But as Commissioner Hall was saying, if she's got rulemakings that are going on where she could use some help, or other commissioners, that would be a great use. So that's just my input.
Right, and we take the burden off of you to supervise. But I think I thought Jonas's idea was simply that if the advertisement came from not just one commissioner, but OGC, then it was more attractive. I thought that was his concept. And I don't know if that's true, but if it is, maybe then that's a good way to advertise it. But, and to the extent OGC has to present rulemakings to the commission, it might make some sense to have it advertised that way. But like I say, we don't have any. I guess there was one semester we were advertising sort of late and we didn't get any takers, but otherwise there's been a pretty strong interest. So either way, advertising in either way should probably be okay, but it might help in getting a broader level of interest if the word OGC is up there in the advertisement. But I'm well aware that you guys don't have time to supervise people. And I liked Steve's idea of pressing our executive assistants, who are all lawyers, into service to do some of the supervising as well. You just have to be a licensed attorney. So.
And Commissioner, that's more of a recent development that we have attorneys available in the commissioner's office.
I know, but it's good, isn't it?
Right. Well, I was just saying.
Yep. Just as a quick comment, Commissioner Hall, we don't necessarily have to advertise it under OGC. It could be from the commissioners directly. And
that's what we've done.
It might even be more exciting for law students to know that they're going to be working directly under the supervision of a commissioner on a specific project that has a specific deliverable. And to me, that creates a very attractive externship when people have a sense of what they might be able to accomplish.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's the way we've done in the past, although not with a specific objective like this, which is, I think, also very clarifying and probably really exciting to people who are interested in this area. So I think it's a good idea. And I think it's fine to advertise it under certain commissioners as well. I think that's good.
Or on behalf of the commission as a whole. But that's stuff that we can work out and have Jonas or Brian just come up with a way of doing that.
Right. And I thought Jonas was, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm done.
I thought Jonas was really trying to stress that we use that particular system, and we do, and you kind of have to, I think. So it's a good system. We just need to plug into it. And Colin's working on that right now, actually. So we should have some better information pretty soon on getting signed up.
Commissioner, may I ask this? Have we bastardized your work here, or are we headed the right direction?
No, I think this is good, and I think we'll have ample time to really explore these ideas in greater detail. I think the bottom line is just to provide the recap of the first part of the workshop, and because I have specific ideas too about, we're moving toward creating a cadre of technical experts in OGC, but its organizational structure and the supervision of that cadre is really not in place. And so I think the discussion of maybe involving the assistants to work with the experts in OGC could relieve OGC of managing this group of diverse experts, economists, engineers. And so I think we have time to address that, but I just still encourage everyone on the commission to look at and staff to look at this recap and please make any changes, because obviously when we add in the notes from today and provide a summary, they're just notes. We're going to have to explore these, and as you said at the outset, Mr. Chair, transform this from draft notes of actionable items and convert it to an action plan with timeframes and assignments, and then we implement it. And by the way, I just want to apologize. I had to step out and take a call. The Senate Finance Committee Vice Chair called me back, and so we had a detailed discussion about our budget, and I can fill all of you in later.
Good.
Terrific.
Great.
They're talking to you. That's a plus.
That's great.
So let's go on then. If any further comments, Commissioner Byrd, Commissioner Vicente Aguilar?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't have no comments.
So going on to the next step here, we've listed a lot of things that we would like to do. And I think maybe the best way to approach this is for commissioners to step up and say what portions of these like-to-dos they have a passion for and they would like to take leadership on. So seeing all these things, what's most important to you, and what would you be willing to be the lead on? And I think what I'll do is start with Commissioner Maestas on this one.
I assume Jason, do you want to just go to my plan? I don't know if it's Isaac or Jason running the.
It's me, Chairman Commissioner Maestas. Let me get to that bookmark. And here we go.
Okay. My first critical objective is, I think we're dabbling around the low-hanging fruit with regard to electrification. By dealing with transportation electrification, it is in statute now. But I'd like to see us take a more holistic approach to electrification. Rebates for oh God.
Heat pump.
Anyway, I'll go on to that, to that point. But
yeah.
I've taken an interest in transportation electrification, and I'm fully aware of the statute. I see some blind spots in it. In fact, we've already dealt with one of them in that the statute's not clear what utilities have to submit a program, and we're dealing with that as we go. So we need a rule to kind of clarify the applicability of the statute on transportation electrification. We need to really address, seriously targeting low to moderate income communities, which is also prominent, in that statute. And so I'm willing to take that on. I've already met with hearing examiners to start, asking critical questions that we can draw on and use in the draft rule. But getting back to, electrification in general, other states have really created a very diverse program to incentivize the electrification of new housing stock. They've set aside money to deal with health safety code issues with older stock owned by LMI communities to at least allow that particular home to be eligible for weatherization. So basically, the demand side management is the cheapest and the lowest hanging fruit, and I just think we as a state really need to strengthen weatherization, look at electrification as a whole, and start working on at least the rules that are required in front of us, which is transportation electrification. So the next thing is grid monetization. I think if you look at all of part 2 of my outline, it is duplicative with what Art has told us. I'm really excited about grid monetization. I think it's one of the most substantive, comprehensive efforts since the passage of the ETA. And I think it's incumbent upon us and all the other related stakeholder agencies to take that sequencing plan and move on it. And I think we are. And I think Commissioner Hall is already moving on the update of the interconnection manual. That's one of the major prominent tasks assigned to the PRC by grid modernization. So this is all those things I think overlap, with what Art presented. But I feel like we really need to continue the momentum and be a catalyst for implementation, of grid modernization. I think Art mentioned that they released all the white papers. I think the next thing is they're going to start forming implementation groups, and we need to make sure that we have representation in those implementation groups beyond Arthur O'Donnell. I like Arthur, but I think that we really need to have more representation in those appropriate implementation groups. So I'm not going to go into it in any greater detail. I like the IRP rules. I think we've already clearly have discovered we need to update the IRP rule and allow for more time for public comment. We're dealing with that as we speak. And the other thing is to strengthen the IRP. I know that it was diluted since that I think it was the 19195 case, but I see problems with it. Whenever we do a CCN or an abandonment proceeding, those actions have to show consistency with an IRP, but yet, the IRP is a planning tool. So, I see a disconnect there, and I don't want to belabor it, but I think maybe we can broaden the scope of the IRP rule and the update beyond just procurement, and look at timelines and maybe even, integrate or require a DRP, a distributed resource plan, instead of making it a standalone requirement, adding to the work of our staff that's already, I think, overwhelmed and overextended. And then I think we need to look at having a better separation on the stagger of the submittals of the IRPs and RPSs. I think staggering the workload is going to help staff as well. So I think that this revisitation of the rule should look at that as well. I already talked about, number 3 there, demand side management. I'm of the philosophy that I think if we empower the ratepayer with real-time information on their energy use, I think we can bring about behavioral modification. I think if we empower them by, increasing funding for weatherization and funding for addressing, health safety code violations to pave the way for weatherization, I think that's also important. In terms of the needs down below, I think we've talked about that. We addressed it in our budget overview. We need to fill these positions and identify appropriate funding levels. I think I want to thank Jason for helping to coordinate this legislative strategy to really strengthen the advocacy for more budget. And we're probably not going to, get, any additional funding beyond our what the LFC has recommended, which is what the House has given a due pass to. But we're still going to use any means possible, through the junior bill and House Bill 2. So deadlines are already, being established on the House and the Senate side. So if you can go to the next page. Any questions for me so far? I really don't want to get too much into the weeds. Okay.
I'm kind of confused, actually, Commissioner Maestas. I thought Steve wanted us to identify where we wanted to apply ourselves on projects. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
That in the work plan, when we develop it, I'm going to plug myself in, for example, on the rulemaking for transportation electrification. I mean,
okay,
that's what I wanted.
And that's what I had you down for. And, anything that Joe, that you have a specific thing that you really want to work on or lead, you just feel free to identify it as specifically as you can.
Yeah, I want to work with Commissioner Hall on the IRP rule update. I really have a desire to do that.
okay, great. And I like what you just said about making it more comprehensive than just including procurement. So I welcome you to our next meeting, which we have scheduled on Monday. I forget what time. And you can see where we are so far, and then jump right in with making it more comprehensive with what you've described. That'd be excellent.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I guess if you look at the top of the second page, I'm really focusing on getting the legislature's attention to the unaddressed recommendations in the 2017 evaluation of the PRC.
What page are you on? What page?
It's what's ever displayed there. I don't know what that is. Page 78.
Yeah, okay. Okay, yeah, I printed it out.
So right now, what we're doing is we're making a play at a minimum in this request is to have the vetoed budget or the budget that was vetoed in the FY21 budget, and that was for 5 authorized FTEs. We're asking for that in the amount of $466,000, and we're asking for a non-recurring appropriation of $75,000 to conduct the legislative audit that was recommended in the evaluation. And I think that will really position us better in requesting additional funding, hopefully by the FY23 funding cycle. And I really think that we need to start working with these appropriate standing committees instead of just waiting till the gavel falls in the next legislative session. So I think that's a big focus of mine initially, is to get the necessary funding for the PRC to do my part as an individual commissioner. Under wants, the evaluation recommended the establishment of a technical e-library. I thought I had read in various testimony that staff really doesn't have access to a lot of helpful information. I know that the use of the VPN is sporadic, but I think we can really leverage that more and, create the budget to, if it requires, subscriptions for these national publications. I think our staff needs to come forward and say, this is really what we need as a minimum in terms of appropriate technical references when we're adjudicating some of these cases, particularly utility cases. The other thing, number 2, is in an effort to kind of reach out and leverage other resources from sister agencies and even academic institutions, is to develop comprehensive MOUs. For example, I think low-hanging fruit would be to work with MNERD on grid modernization, to share technical resources. We should be even working, and I understand there was talk about signing an MOU with New Mexico Tech to use some of their computing power to run some of these models. I really think that, and being a Fed, MOUs with other federal agencies was very, very common and very successful. And some of these MOUs really were just a one-way sharing of information. So I think we need to institutionalize our cooperation with like-minded agencies, state and federal, and our academic institutions. I think, Commissioner Hall, you're working with Sandia National Labs. I think that is spot on. I think we're leveraging all that know-how for the benefit of public regulation, but we need to start thinking about these targeted relationships through MOUs with other agencies and academia. I think number 3, we're doing what we should be doing, but I think we're going to have to really have a more robust year-round legislative strategy. We can't be reactive when the gavel drops, when the session starts. And so maybe when we talk about this work plan, we can make assignments, and I'm happy to do my part, with Jason and whoever else Jason, designates to really come up with a more robust legislative agenda, but an advocacy that's year round. And then the last thing there is I'm really worried about the natural gas markets, that I don't think we're doing enough to work with them on maybe investigating other business models. We're basically letting the IOUs lead them down a dead end street by basically no longer using them in their most cost-effective portfolio as they move towards 2045. And, we just finished wrapping up a natural gas infrastructure expansion. And so I just think that we need to be stewards instead of reacting. I think we somehow need to find the right mechanism to start working with natural gas markets. And, we might even benefit from the assessment of what's happening in Texas right now. But I just don't think we should let kind of attrition and inertia render them obsolete. And I think Commissioner Fishman, you alluded to the fact that, if these utilities start abandoning their financial interest and they have to pay for stranded costs, but yet the customer base is shrinking, I mean, there's going to be a disproportionate share of those abandonment costs to a shrinking customer base. And we need to realize that and somehow find a way to step into that discussion and maybe even lead the discussion in working with natural gas markets to ensure a smooth transition for a carbon-free future. I have more. I did this kind of just kind of a little, I did it in a point of time, but I have other issues, and maybe I can add to them, when we finalize the work plan, because I think there's more that I can help with, that Jonas and I can help with, instead of taking the lead on a singular issue. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. Just going to echo on natural gas. When it comes to approving future investments and technologies down the future, and one of them could be hydrogen. Are they could use that same infrastructure to deliver hydrogen instead of methane? Those are all kinds of big picture issues that we need to be aware of and keep in mind as we're looking at things down the road. And so I'm glad you raised that issue, because that's part of the whole picture. Is as electrification goes up, something happens with all of that methane investment. Commissioner Hall. I'm going to go
yes.
to you next.
Well, I noticed Commissioner Maestas was going through his list that we generated a long time ago of objectives, needs, and wants, but mine's pretty brief and basically if you want to look at that, it's on page 79 of our packet, and I'm saying 79 PDF number, page number 79. I stated I thought our objectives were to implement energy transition in a timely fashion through all the statutes that apply, ETA, Renewable Energy Act, Efficient Use of Energy Act. I feel we need to determine and implement our transition policy on pandemic-driven disconnections, but I think we've already done that. I wrote this some time ago. Assist broadband deployment by reforming broadband fund recurring obligations to free more funds, but I think that's, I don't know if that's a critical objective necessarily anymore. And there's legislation associated with that, I think, proposed legislation. And then visualize a plan for post-pandemic locational work needs. But actually, I don't think that's a critical objective compared to just getting our work done. Our needs, I felt, involved increasing funding for staff, improving job classifications to achieve improved compensation, and then complete needed rulemakings ASAP to provide guidance to IOUs and co-ops. I also mentioned workflow improvements between commission and OGC and hearing examiners. From my perspective as a commissioner, that's important. So, but really, I think the chief job in front of us, besides, just being prepared to be proactive rather than reactive as cases come and go through our mill, is the rulemakings. I think that's where we're behind and we need to get up to speed as soon as possible. And that's why I've sort of thrown myself into some, and I'd be happy to have Commissioner Maestas help in the procurement IRP arena, because I do think that is a rule where other things belong as well. So in the context of this list of wrapping, let's see, let's go to let's do wrapping up active rulemakings. I'd be interested in continuing working on the procurement policy, which is also IRP. And then now I'm on, I think, page 2 or 3 of the PDF document in our packet, going back to page 3. No, 2. It straddles 2 and 3.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Hall, I have currently on the screen page 80 of the PDF, which includes.
Go to page 3 of the PDF. I'm going back to this list that was generated, maybe by you, Jonas, I don't know, in preparation for this meeting, that lists our tasks that we had identified. So go to page 3, at the bottom of page 3, item number 6, rulemakings. Or let's see, is that where I'm gonna be?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, are you referring to page 3 of your document or page 3 of the PDF, or?
Actually, go to page 2 of the PDF.
Page 2 of the PDF? Okay.
No, wait a minute. This takes a minute. I've got 2 things going on
Page 2
here.
of the PDF, Mr.
Let's
Chairman.
see. Actually, let's see. I want to go past items. So we're in item 6, paragraph B. So on the PDF, that is page 3. Wrapping up active rulemakings. Oh, it's page 4, sorry, page 4 of the PDF.
That should be shown on the screen now. Commissioner Hall.
Yes, we're
You
looking
got
at
it
it.
now? Okay, wrapping up active rulemakings. So item number 4 underneath B is procurement policy. I want to continue on that. And then down in item C, which rulemakings could ease staff workload in the long run. That's standardizing IRP requirements. And that actually is going to include procurement and some of these other items below. distribution resource plans as part of the IRP. I agree that needs to be included. And going down to paragraph D, and I have question marks with respect to items 1, 2, and 3. I think they actually may also have somewhat of a nexus to the IRP rule, or they could be standalone, encouraging utilities to install advanced metering infrastructure statewide. That could be standalone, but certainly advanced metering is something that's contemplated to support the procurements. But if that needs to be standalone, I'd be happy to work on that one. Adopt new technical standards to address advanced inverters. Actually, I think both of these items might be related to the interconnection manual updates, but if not closely enough, then I'd be happy to work on them as individual rules. And then establish incentive programs to encourage adoption of behind the meter energy storage. I don't know where that would belong. Maybe a standalone, but maybe it could be wrapped into either of these other two. But those are topics that I would be willing to work on, have someone work on and supervision under me, because they all seem to be related. So, and up above in paragraph B, I volunteered with Judy to help work on the purple rule, because that's something that's on her plate that she needs some help with, and I and my assistant can help her with that too.
So I'm going to try and clarify something here, or I think it'll clarify.
Yeah.
Every commissioner on every one of these efforts is certainly free to participate and push it forward. I think what's important, though, for us to get the work done is that somebody takes the lead. So I'll just take an example here. Cynthia, you had that terrific meeting yesterday on the interconnection rule, where you and Arthur developed a list of issues in a work plan, and we've got 2 steps that we know we want to complete by the end of the year, and some interconnection manual stuff that's technical and might take a little longer. You've taken the lead. You're organizing all the meetings and all the input, but any commissioner can participate and give input as part of that process. And I think as we're talking about taking the lead, that's essentially what it means. Doesn't mean that that commissioner controls the policy, but it does mean they're moving all the work forward.
Right.
That creates the structure for all of us to participate.
Correct. Create the structure.
Does that, so just asking other commissioners, are they all comfortable with that definition of taking the lead? Commissioner Maestas.
Yeah, no, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. And I think there's other, rulemakings that I'm interested in, but I'm going to talk to Jonas about it. And a lot of this is going to depend on, what our ultimate decision is, at least in the immediate future, to secure any outside expertise to help either finish a pending rulemaking or initiate a new one.
And my point here is nobody should feel excluded from participating in a policy just because someone else is the lead. It's just being the lead. It's your responsibility to be sure the work gets done timely. And you're kind of a project manager, but you're certainly not the decider. Although obviously when you're the project manager, you have perhaps more influence on the result, but that's just part of the way things work.
Yeah, and I just have a burning question. Is there a reason why we haven't at least indicated that we need a rule for the ETA?
We need what?
A rule for the ETA?
Yeah, I don't know what was in the minds of the people who wrote it, but I mean, there are several rules. Well, I know the Renewable Energy Act rulemaking derives from the ETA. I mean, the ETA, as you know, modified several rules, several different statutes, I mean. So I don't know that a rule could just come from just that one statute.
Mr. Chairman, I just
Yeah,
wanted
go ahead,
to,
Mike.
we really should be referring to it as Senate Bill 489, not the ETA.
Yeah.
A is a discrete portion of 489. So when you're talking about the changes to the Renewable Energy Act, those are changes by 489, but not necessarily by the ETA.
Correct. And John, are you here, John Reynolds? Guess
Yes,
not.
yes,
Oh,
good
there you
morning.
are.
I'm here, Mr. Chair.
So, you know, you've been working closely on this. You might just want to real quickly just outline any rulemaking activity that you're involved in response to SB 489.
This time, Mr. Chair and Commissioners, we're involved in the rulemaking, two rulemakings, and both related to the Renewable Energy Rule, Rule 572. And the first docketed case deals with amending the rule so that it conforms to the amended REA, or Renewable Energy Act, which is the new RPS standards and a few other things. And the next docket, which has comments due in a week or so, addresses updating Rule 572 to address things like Commissioner Fishman, you had raised an interest in about the long-term use, continuing use of riders to collect the cost of meeting the RPS, since renewable energy is likely, you know, is on track to cover all energy needs, or zero carbon is, and also about line loss adjustments to the rider. So those, and as far as SB 489, I believe those are the only rulemakings that are ongoing as a result of that statute.
Are there any others that you see that are needed?
I mean, certainly, you know, I think we discussed some of those. I mean, the rules dealing with storage, with you know, the update to the interconnection manual. At this point, I'm not, I can't think of any other others that we need at this point.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, transportation, I beg your pardon, transportation electrification is one that I think we do need. Yep.
Okay.
And then down the road, we'll need an update to the Efficient Use of Energy Act that was amended in 2019, where it requires the commission to update the energy efficiency savings goals from 2025 and later. So there's some time left for that one. But yeah, those are, sorry for recollecting those here on the fly, but those are the ones that I recall at this point.
Thank you, John. Commissioner Hall, back to you. Anything else that you wanted to cover here?
No, I think that's pretty much all I wanted to convey.
So we've been going for a little over an hour and a half. I'd suggest that we take a break a short break till 11:20, 13 minutes. And then we come back and the other commissioners can lay out what's top of mind for them. So let's come back at 11:20. And please be on time. No straggling on this one. Okay, thanks.
Say that again. I'm sorry, I didn't have my speaker for a second. Are we back on?
Okay. Everyone back? Commissioner Hall, were you pretty much complete?
Oh, yes, I was done.
Thank you. Excuse my taking a bite to eat here.
I'm going to do it too.
I'm going to go off video while I chomp. So next I'll go to Commissioner Byrd.
Yes, sir.
Any thoughts about things that you're particularly passionate about and would like to focus on?
So one of the things that we started a couple years ago, and I'm going to continue to work on, is the broadband issues with Commissioner Vicente Aguilar. She started them, and we're going to team up and continue to work on those. We kind of dropped the ball this last year, but we all know why. But there was a lot more to do on that. We got a good start to it, and it came to an end. The other issues that, I've had issues with the ambulance rules. Some of that has to be changed is through the legislative process. And when I quit ticking off all the legislators and get one that'll work with me, but my job is to tick them off right now. They're like the referees, and I'm pointing out they're making bad calls, and they get mad when someone does that. I don't understand that, but anyway. So I'm hoping by next year we actually have some legislation that will help, especially the rural ambulance providers. But it's clear that even the cities are having problems, meeting all the requirements. So maybe we can change them so that we get better ambulance service instead of no ambulance service. So anyway, I'm pretty short on that. I'm going to be focusing on the broadband issues along with Commissioner Vicente Aguilar.
Mr. Chairman, this is Jason.
Yeah, Jason.
Commissioner Byrd, just one point. Senate Bill 329 is an ambulance services bill that's being sponsored by Senator Campos. And basically it establishes an appropriation, I think, of like $9 million for the underserved, area, which would address rural New Mexico. One of the issues, and we could talk about this next week, and I think I've talked to you offline, or actually I'll just say, let me talk to you about it offline, is where that funding should be allocated, EMS fund or PRC. So it's one of the questions. So I think it's getting some attention, to your point.
Right. I agree. And Senator Campos, he's not my senator, but he's my constituent, and he's a neighbor over here. I'm just a couple miles from the line where he's at, and he's done a lot of good. And this has been one of his issues too. This isn't the first time he's brought up ambulance issues, and he's one of the senators that's willing to carry bills related to the rural ambulance carriers.
Agreed.
Okay. Anything else, Commissioner Byrd?
No, I'm not all that long-winded.
Point well taken. We can all learn from you.
I'm actually offended by the inference.
I'm including.
Well, that's a problem you take. That's a problem you take. I didn't give it.
Commissioner Vicente Aguilar.
Good morning. I believe it's still in the morning. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, and my colleagues and all the staff members that are listening in. I just feel that today, I wish we could all meet in person, but we can't do that.
Amen.
And we need to see each other, and we need to plan together as a group, but that's not the case today. My hope is down the road I hope we can all come back into one building and plan the way leaders should plan for their visions. As you all have heard me many times during the open meeting, during the workshops, I don't hold my thoughts back. I speak for the people. And one of my passionate goals is to work through the hard times and the bad times with our staff members. One division director mentioned in the last workshop that he feels that he's inefficient when he works from home. And I'm glad they share that. And I'm passionate about the expertise that our staff members hold as they continue to work for us. They very well know that they cannot freely express their true thought before the commissioners, because it's really easy for the commissioners to go after the employees. I've seen that happen time and time again. So one of my goals is to lead our staff members in a good way the next 22 months. If you want a commissioner that's going to speak for you and that's going to listen to you, it's going to be me. I like the work that our chief of staff has done the last 2 years. And I want to have a group sessions with our employees. Where is it that they need help? That's why I say, don't be afraid to express your point when we call on you. Don't be afraid. In the past, yes, there's commissioners that would go after a single employee just because they were speaking their mind. And I'm going to see that none of my colleagues go after one employee. All the employee is doing is expressing their frustration, their workload, and how we go beyond that. I want to bring in expertise, people that have professional licenses to teach our employees. This is what we face with the new laws that were passed. This is how we're going to get over the hurdle. And let's continue to work together the next 22 months. Mr. Chairman, that's what I would like to lead. I would like to have work sessions with my employees to inspire them. And I'm not shy when I see an email when one employee is saying, I have a lot to do. I don't know if I can meet the deadline tomorrow. I'm not shy to say, let's think about this. Let's have a structure. I was a little bit hesitant about this workshop because there's no structure ahead of the plan. There's no structure with our staff members. Everybody's just dotting the dots all over. And I will make that structure. So, Mr. Chairman, that's one item that I would like to accomplish the next 22 months. I'm going to shepherd my employees to the very end. Number 2, Commissioner Byrd mentioned broadband. Across the country, a survey was done. New Mexico is ranked the 49th in broadband services to the people living in New Mexico. And we all know there's a number of broadband bills that were introduced. What does it take to make them understand that it is quite expensive to connect ground wire technology between homes in rural New Mexico. The homes are located many miles apart, and to keep the maintenance of that technology is very expensive. And I want to teach, and I want to let the people of New Mexico know this is reality. But there's better ways that we can put broadband for our school children, such as pilot programs. 2 years ago, we had the Rural Networks Conference, and I invited every telephone carrier, every business that had to do with telecommunications, including broadband in New Mexico. That was my vision for a very long time, and we accomplished that. And I wanted to thank my colleagues. You all traveled to Farmington. We assigned you a topic, and you did a fantastic job. And behind the scenes, my objective of that conference is I want to see that eye-to-eye communication with the carriers. Do they truly put every dollar towards a used technology that they may buy on the internet? Do they truly use that last dollar to help a family that has never seen telecommunication services or broadband services? I wanted to see that eye-to-eye connection. And I wanted to go on and see how they do their business, how they relate to us as a commission. And I've seen that the last couple of years since we had our conference. I've been asked to go to the Senate chambers because I fight for low-income families. One senator said, "You are not making the connection with one company." But they had their cellular phone in front of me recording my conversation. And I said, I told that senator, when you have time, I would suggest that you put away your cell phone instead of videotaping me and call me back. I'm happy to continue my conversation. I had tribal council members from the Navajo Nation and a member of a telephone company, a staff member from the telephone company, come to my office when we still had offices. And they brought in a script of the minutes of our open meetings when I talk about telecommunications. And in that script, it said we need telecommunication companies that has the sophistication with the new technologies and making it a meaningful delivery services. So a telephone company sent those individuals to my office, and they said I was wrong. And just 1 year ago, another state senator was upset because I was not supporting his bill. And he chased me all over the PERA building. I allowed a lawyer and the telecommunications staff member handle the meeting to meet with the senator. I'm not going to be treated that way. And that's why they are hearing my voice. They're hearing, where are the funds? How did you utilize the funds that you have received 10 years ago, 8 years ago? It's not the broadband. There's no infrastructure. So I am very passionate about this. I would like to bring in a comprehensive plan to work with the federal government, state government, local governments, and the special interests. This is my second goal. The first time was to bring in all the carriers, all the telecom industry. My next goal is to create a system and educate the people. Different government branches are working together to flourish the real need, why New Mexicans are not connected in rural New Mexico. So, Mr. Chairman, it should not be anything that's difficult to figure out. You know where I come from, and I'm also, new staff members are learning from me where I stand, and my recommendations and my plan. It should not be a requirement. It should be a determination coming from the heart of a leader that's going to place all the players in one room. If we get to that day that we are allowed to come back into a room to have a conference, that will be very good. But I'm also going to work very hard to hold a virtual conference, and I'm going to invite all my colleagues to take a topic that they are passionate about in the broadband issue and telecommunications issue, and I want to accomplish that again, and I haven't set the date yet. And my personal assistant, my executive assistant, she is specialized in public relations. She didn't have a mistake to put on a conference in Farmington, New Mexico. Accommodations, the food, the catering, the registration, she nailed it. Along with employees from IT, including our chief of staff, including members of our staff members that were passionate about what I am passionate about. I didn't have to pull. They came in. How can I help you, Commissioner? We want to make this happen. And we accomplished that. And lastly, I want to give awards to everyone that saved families during the pandemic, whether it was setting up a hot spot, whether it was doing everything that they can to make that connection as a reality. So those are three things, Mr. Chairman: taking care of my employees, creating another conference for our organization, and the third thing is setting up a public award ceremony for all the industry that saved lives. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Vicente Aguilar. So I'm going last here, and I'm going to keep it pretty brief. I've got a few key areas that I'm most concerned about. One is procurement. And if I had to define the problem or the issue that I want to improve our performance on, it would be the fact that the way we do procurement now, by the time we're considering a CCN or a PPA, in so many ways, the decision is kind of a fait accompli. It comes to us at a point that it's so late that our ability to influence what's going on to meet our environmental goals and our cost goals and our grid modernization goals is very, very limited. And so I think it's really important that we get to a procurement process that gets all the stakeholders involved earlier, and that when our utilities go off and get proposals and through an RFP and make proposals to the commission, that the stakeholders have already had their input and the key discussion has already happened, and we're not just kind of stuck saying yes or no to something that may or may not meet all the stakeholders' needs. So at any rate, coming up with a procurement process is right at the top of my list in a procurement rule. And by the way, that touches on the IRP and how the IRP kind of sets that procurement process in motion. It touches on how we do RFPs and how they're issued to be sure that they address all the issues that the commission is trying to be sure get handled properly and in accordance with statute. So it's no small task, but I think that's one that I'd really like to be dedicating time to and take some leadership on. I believe the interconnection rule is super important. After yesterday's meeting, I'm very comfortable that we're off to a good start there and under Commissioner Hall's leadership. And also many thanks to Arthur in helping support those efforts. Third area that I feel very strongly about, and I don't think it's a rulemaking, but I think it's something that we need to work on as a commission as we have rate dockets coming before us. And that's basically looking at the return on equity and how that's awarded to utilities. And I have to say, I see some really significant disconnects between awarded returns on equity and what happens in equity markets in general. And across all the rate cases that come up over the coming year, that's something I'd like to focus on, both in testimony and asking questions and trying to get a lot more clarity about how it is that we, and quite frankly, the industry, the regulatory community in general, addresses those returns on equity and what the appropriate amounts are. And of course, that's super important to ratepayers and to people who are living in poverty or the working poor, and being sure that they get fair rates. And there's a lot of investment that's going to be made in the future for grid modernization. And, you know, right now, if I look at the numbers, every time we invest $1, this is a really broad generalization, but every time we add $1 to rate base, shareholders get $2 of market value. And that doesn't seem very fair to ratepayers. It seems like there's something more fair that can be happening there. And so that's what I want to look into. So anyway, those are my key priorities. Looking forward to the next year that I would like to take leadership on. I think with that, are there any more thoughts that commissioners want to put out about their particular passion and priorities? And I'll include those, and then I'll just do a quick readout here of what I think I heard from everybody.
Mr. Chair?
Okay, thanks.
Just on your priorities, I just had a couple of questions. One of them being the consolidation of dockets. I think it sounds like a great idea, but all that I'd ask is that perhaps you consult with the hearing examiners in Ashley to see where that may be appropriate. But I think if it better manages the workload, I think it's a good thing. But I've heard kind of mixed feelings about the consolidation of dockets. And then the other question I had is delving into return on equity. As you know, that is a very sensitive area and almost central, right, to the whole rate making process in terms of the utilities' financial interests. And I'm just wondering, I mean, we have a lot of priorities that are stacking up, and I mean, do you think it's wise to really go there? Because in all the national information that I've read, really shows that, you know, litigated return on equity has been higher than a stipulated return on equity. And I'm just wondering if we're picking our battles, given all the pending work that we have, including the limited resources. Should the commission pursue, you know, pursuing a more equitable return on equity? So that's kind of those are my issues, I think, or comments on your, you know, your priorities.
Yeah, I think, you know, I started out in finance and I've been looking at the numbers and boy, I see some real big disconnects. And I do think it's worth exploring. I have no idea where it's going to lead. I have no intention of starting a rulemaking or distracting anybody else's attention. My intention is to ask a lot of questions in the outstanding dockets of our utilities and of the stakeholders who intervene, to see if I can just bring more clarity to the way that we're balancing the interests of ratepayers in determining that ROE. I do not anticipate using staff resources or any other resources other than my own questioning to see if I can sharpen people's thinking on that issue. If that makes sense to you.
Yeah, it does. Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah, because I think you're asking the right question. That's not something I would start a rulemaking or some huge policy initiative on. It's kind of my thing.
Got it. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, Commissioner Hall.
I just wanted to chime in, I guess. I don't think it's your thing alone. I am concerned about return on equity too, but you know, it's an issue that arises in rate cases as part of the discussion and part of the analysis. So, I mean, I think we're all really invested in what returns on equity ought to be. And while I totally acknowledge what Commissioner Maestas was saying about what the status quo is, I definitely think it's a concept that we should have an open mind about, because you know, sometimes the status quo just develops and develops badly. And I've had concerns about return on equity for a long time, but without a real background on finance, I guess I haven't been able to get more involved in it until recently, with watching you and also with working with my sister Colin, who has a strong background in finance. So I'm learning a lot about it. And I think, I definitely think it's something that should still be in our wheelhouse, because I think it's kind of central to part of our regulatory responsibilities, to making sure that the balance is struck properly with respect to risk. And, you know, ever since I've become aware of the issue, it just bothered me. It didn't feel like the methodology we were using was all there was to it. So, having said that, that's enough.
I'll just make one other comment on it is, the more I'm looking at the issue, it's not even a big change that I'm not looking at big changes at the kind of modeling that's done. I'm just looking at how we can use better benchmarks for our modeling. And So I don't think it requires huge process changes. I do think it requires some changes in the way that we look at modeling and compare it to what's happening in the market and what it means for that modeling and what it means for modeling assumptions. And so again, it's the kind of thing that I think nationwide the numbers are off. And I could be wrong as we delve into it further. But anyway, it's not something I intend to start any. It's something that I plan to address through existing dockets and through questions that I will be asking. And I assume Commissioner Hall will be as well, because we have talked about it, and she has generously given her assistant Collins time to work with me to develop some of these questions and kind of crystallize the issues. And he's been terrific.
Commissioner, Chairman, may I jump in for a quick second to address Commissioner Maestas's question?
Yeah, Colin, please do.
Commissioner Maestas and other commissioners, I have been working with Commissioner Hall and Commissioner Fishman on the return on equity issue. Like Commissioner Hall mentioned, I do have a background in finance, but the big picture from my perspective here is that a large function of the PRC is to stand in place of competition because we're dealing with regulated monopolies. And my current stance researching this topic is that the balance has been tipped in favor of utilities in terms of these rate cases. And I don't believe that the data presented by analysts in the cases is 100% on the level. I think that some of the data is disingenuous to a certain extent, and I think part of it is that we don't have a standardized modeling analysis. So sometimes projections are skewed, data sets can be manipulated, and I feel like the commission is sort of being taken advantage of here. And I just think it is a big issue from my perspective, and I'm willing to speak with any commissioner or any assistant on these issues. So Commissioner Maestas, if you or your assistant would like more information about it, please follow up with me, and I'm happy to provide that. That's all. Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you. Thank you, Colin.
Thank you, Colin. So what I'm going to do here, and this is where I may be guilty of crass simplification. So please jump in and correct me, folks, wherever you can, because I'm going to just summarize what I heard commissioners saying their priorities are. And so I'm going to start out with Joe, who had a long list of things that he talked about, but I'm going to focus just on the things that he would become kind of the lead on. And Joe, just feel free to correct me if I've got it wrong. So transportation electrification and electrification in general stood as number one to me.
Yeah.
Number two that came up to me was essentially demand side issues. And I'm not sure if I heard this correctly, but to me, things like weatherization, probably demand side management fits into that. I'm not sure. But that sounded like a second area that you really wanted to take a lead on in the power sector. So those stood out as number 1 and 2, and I'm listing only 1 and 2 because I don't know how many more we can realistically fit in. But tell me if there's an important 3 that you would put there, because beyond that, I have trouble following your priorities.
Yeah, I think that we, if we have the resources and the inclination, I think we as commissioners should even also help with the pending rulemakings. And I've just been exchanging text messages with Jonas, and I'd like to assist and maybe be a catalyst for, bringing the energy efficiency rule home. I for one, want to see specific investments in energy efficiency. And I know other states like Michigan have very specific investment levels in energy efficiency. So I just think that we need to help with the pending rules, not just initiating new rules. And so I don't know what other commissioners, I'm not trying to push anyone aside, but I certainly want to help with that energy efficiency rule.
Okay, terrific. There's plenty to do, so I don't think anyone should worry that there won't be enough for other commissioners to work on or to lead. Okay, so then I'm going to go on to Cynthia. And Cynthia, for you, the 2 things that I had standing out were IRP, interconnection, and kind of tied to that, procurement. And those were kind of the 3 big things that were standing out for me.
Correct. I sort of combine IRP and procurement together. I say IRP/procurement for right now, because, I think they're related, but I like the comments that Commissioner Maestas made earlier in combining other concepts, not concepts, elements of the process. So I'm open to his ideas too, just to make it the most comprehensive rule we can have. So
Okay.
we'll talk about that.
But those are areas that, regardless of how all the details play out, that you would like to take a lead role in.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And then I'm going to go to Commissioner Byrd. And Commissioner Byrd, you were talking about broadband and ambulance rules as your focus.
Yes.
Okay, so I got those right. And by the way, couple pieces of legislation, 360 and 361 Senate bills, I think are really interesting on broadband. And I don't know if you've had a chance to look at them in detail, but definitely worth looking at. And they've come up just recently. And then Commissioner Vicente Aguilar, I think your focus is working with, tell me if I've caught this correctly, working with staff, basically to be sure that they're heard and resourced.
Mr. Terman?
Yes. Go ahead.
When I say I'm going to work with staff, I would like to set up a time for a retreat. And maybe one retreat this year and another retreat next year. And the way the health order is stated, it's going to be virtual.
Mm-hmm.
And I would love if we can move into our office space, which I'm assuming is going to be soon. And I want to work side by side with our chief of staff to make sure we have a smooth closure by the end of our terms.
Yep. Okay. So anyway, working with staff on those issues, and it sounds like the tool you want to use to do that is staff retreats. Did I catch that correctly?
Right. One retreat this year and another one next year.
Okay. And your second focus is broadband, and you mentioned in particular schools. And did I capture that correctly?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to put on the table a comprehensive plan so that the regional branches of government, the state government, the local government, and special interest groups can all be on one page to talk about broadband. And that's my goal, to hold another conference.
Okay. A conference, and again, there's legislation out there to bring broadband resources together. I think there's two different bills. And right now, both those bills are focused on putting lots of broadband resources into Do It. So that's something you may want to spend some time looking at and being sure our voices get heard.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Uh-oh. I've got a third one here, which I can't even read my own writing. So.
Oh, what I would like to do is to hold a special ceremony.
Oh, the
to give
awards. Okay.
Awards
Go ahead.
to telecommunication and broadband industry, those that have shared stories with me of how they helped people during the pandemic when they were near devastation of how to get help.
Okay. For emergency. Okay. Now I'm going to ask our, wait a minute, I'm going to say mine. So mine were basically procurement rule, which basically touches on IRP and very well may touch on our rules around PPAs and CCNs. And my other focus here was return on equity. And again, just emphasizing, not a rulemaking, not requiring new focus, but just me getting involved in the existing rate making dockets and seeing if I can ask the right questions to sharpen up the way that we look at ROE in future rate cases. Anything that I've missed in terms of just the top level priorities? Okay, and I'm gonna just quick ask, we've got a couple of scribes here, Jonas and Brian, and I guess Carl, do you feel like you've all captured that?
Yeah, it's been pretty clear and straightforward. I've gotten it.
Same here, Mr. Chairman. This is
Okay.
Jonas.
Terrific, guys. Thank you. So having laid out those, and by the way, all the way along this, and I think Commissioner Maestas articulated this pretty well, is these are things that hopefully we will be able to address by bringing in additional outside expertise, by commissioners doing leadership on this in terms of leading rulemakings or initiatives, and that commissioners' assistants can get very involved in following up on these as special projects. So that the idea here is not to add any additional workload, particularly to advocacy staff. And the same also for OGC. And is everyone pretty much on board with that, or do we need more discussion on that?
I'm on board. It's all right. I'm on board with it.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
we're going to have that discussion on, how to allocate the new kind of contracts budget that I think we agreed on. And I had a discussion with Jason that we probably should begin moving on that, but he did make it clear to me that advocacy staff may need outside expertise as well. And so I know you didn't say it, but you may have implied that all that contracts budget that we made available through that budget adjustment request will go to the commission side. But I think we're going to have to really work with the advocacy staff to figure out what contract needs they have. And then we need to put that procurement plan together and move forward. And I think, Jason said perhaps, we ought to move forward with it even before the final blessing on, on the whole thing. But that we can discuss that later, but I just want to make sure that the commission is aware that part of that contracts budget that we made available, a portion will go to the staff side, the advocacy staff side.
Yeah, there's no prejudice there about where that budget gets put. And so thank you for being sure that's clear, at least in my mind. Cynthia?
Oh, well, honestly, I think staff's need for expertise to support them in rate cases is far greater than our need for people to help write rules, because really it's not that hard to write a rule, and we have we have ability to get free resources that I think will, besides our pressing our assistance into service, and certainly I'm doing writing now and I plan to continue doing that. I think we could manage our rule writing mostly in-house. I think staff really needs the support, because the rate cases involved a tremendous amount of expertise that we don't have on staff, that we just can't get from anywhere else. So that's my position.
So it
But
sounds,
we'll have to see how things play out. We just have to see how it goes going forward. But that's what
so it sounds like we're all agreed on that, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I'm not hearing any other comments on that. So I'm gonna kind of go to the last step here, at least that I see for today, which is that if we're all, and by the way, just one more thing to clarify, and again, this is something Commissioner Maestas brought up. We have existing rulemakings that touch on these issues. And certainly to the extent that commissioners want to take some leadership and focus on folding those into their portfolio, if you will, they should feel fine doing that, to be sure that all of our efforts are tying together. And also just to, quite frankly, help staff get the things accomplished that, new statutes and other developments require that we get done and that are already underway. So as Joe brought up, I think it's a good idea. If it touches on one of your key issues and it's an existing rulemaking, obviously feel free to get in there and make it part of your portfolio. So to me, the next steps are basically Well, first of all, I'm going to step back and check in with OGC and with staff and see if they have any comments based on the priorities that we've laid out.
Mr. Chair, and hearing examiners, you wanna-
Yeah, and hearing examiners, sure.
Yeah.
So comments? I'm going to start with Jason. I'm going to call people out here. Jason, any particular issues?
No, nothing that you haven't already touched on. I think that my focus for the most part is gonna kind of be trying to address all of the concerns that every division has brought to the commission's attention on the administrative side of the agency. I think that's going to take up a lot of my time and energy. I am dedicated to working with each division and addressing those issues and concerns. As we all know, it's tied down to resources and money, right? And so I know Commissioner Maestas and I are working at that now. I've been plugging into the Senate Finance Chair. He obviously has been plugging into the Senate Finance Vice Chair. And so I think hopefully they're getting punched in different directions to hear us and what our needs are. And
Yeah.
It's good timing in my opinion. You know, and I've been trying to pay attention as much as possible. As you know, I've got some FIRs that are due today, but
Yeah.
And I'll just share with the commission, there was a bill introduced yesterday that is proposing to move the Pipeline Safety Bureau from the PRC to the Oil Conservation Division. I haven't seen any other PRC reform, if you want to frame it that way, being drafted, but of course there's quite a few dummy bills out there, so we're going to have to pay particular attention to any committee substitutes or changes to those. And so we'll be on our toes here the next couple of weeks. At that point, I think it'll whittle down. But anyway, I bring that up because it could impact, you know, any current or future rulemaking associated with that bureau alone. You know, they're fully staffed, so it's not going to, there's really not a vacancy concern there or a funding issue with the Pipeline Safety Bureau because it is not generally funded. But nonetheless, I'll get some comments out to you guys here soon. On the other point, I know enough to get myself in trouble regarding utility matters, and so I don't want to put myself in the front seat as a subject matter expert, but I'm here to help. I will also advise the commission that even though her first day isn't until next week, we do have the PIO is the working title with us today, and Sarah is participating, taking notes to see what assistance she could provide in the future for you all, and work with each of your assistants and your offices to help, you know, to help with gathering all the information, put it in a presentable manner or format. So we also have another team player available to us as early as next week to assist with this whole process.
Terrific. Anything there, Jason, that where you feel like we're, and also this is for you, John Reynolds, where the discussion we've had is pushing work your way, that is just beyond your ability to handle? Because obviously our focus is trying not to push more work your way, but still hit some priorities.
Well, I'll go first and then I'll give the floor over to John. That's probably a more deserving question for him and his division, it seems like. But I'll tell you now, initially I was concerned about, you know, what role was I going to play in the 2-year work plan and with everything else that we have going on. But obviously the session ends in a month, which will free up some of my time. And I just want to make sure that this gets the attention it deserves. You know, so I'm here to act as a liaison between the commission and staff and help push things along, obviously without hindering what we currently have to focus on statutorily with deadlines and the caseload, et cetera. You know, the last thing we all want to do, right, is risk not performing or underperforming on any of the caseload or forthcoming caseload that's before the commission. I think it's been made very clear that we should be focusing on and taking some more responsibility on quality work. I mean, I'm not saying that staff aren't doing quality work. They are. They're working really hard. But I'm hearing the commission ask for a little bit more detail, a little bit more information and testimony, if you will. So I think, you know, John is taking that into consideration. I know he's working really closely with his staff members to address concerns that have been raised. But it definitely comes back to the need for the authorized FTEs to be funded. So we can start delegating some of that work to qualified individuals. I have to share with you that we just now went back and forth yesterday and today about recruiting a qualified economist, and you know, these counter offers that they're coming back to us with, we just can't afford. Number one. Number two, the counter offers are more than our existing employees are making, and so that's not fair. And so, you know, we're really in a difficult situation trying to compete and recruit qualified individuals with our regulated utility companies, if you will. So, you know, that's where I've seen most of the competition be, but we'll keep pushing. Obviously, you know, we'll keep trying and trying to expand our opportunities and trying to expand the workforce availability to the PRC. I know that's been restricted and limited. Maybe not so much now now that people are understanding that we are probably permanent, for the most part, a high percentage of people are permanently going to be teleworking, you know, for the foreseeable future anyway. But that's my input and response back to that, Mr. Chairman, commissioners. You know, I just try to speak frankly, and I think it's been made very clear of how we've lacked appropriate funding and we've lacked the number of resources. And so, you know, I want to stick up for existing staff because they're trying. We really are. We're trying. And so just need to doing more with less, maybe, you know, isn't the way we should be thinking about it, but it appears that we constantly have to bring that back to the front end of our table in discussion at every meeting I'm involved with. Is want to try to ignore that, but it's realistically it exists at the agency. So I'll give the floor over to John. I'm probably just blabbering off at this point. So John.
John, would you please interrupt before Jason blabbers on anymore?
Yes, please.
I'll try to be brief. Thank you, Jason. The rulemakings are necessary. They're really necessary. And we have fallen behind on some of those. But, you know, I would say, and I appreciate the commissioners stepping up to lead rulemakings. But I've said this before, and the rulemakings are hard. And in my experience, I mean, there are just a lot of stakeholders involved. You know, the utilities can all be there, and they tend to be there. And you know, it is an opportunity to get everybody, all the stakeholders there, and to have a holistic approach and try to develop some policy. And all those are very helpful for us as staff. I mean, because at the end of the day, you know, I get back to what Jason said about caseload, and you know, I think that's our fundamental obligation is to participate in every case and do a good job and offer you our best testimony and our best analysis, so that we have a process that leads to a good final order by the commission, you know, and on top of what the hearing examiners do, what our legal division does, OGC and so forth. So, I mean, those obligations are uppermost on my mind, but for sure, you know, these other policy items that as I kind of view them, you know, with rulemakings and special projects and looking to the future and grid modernization, we obviously need to be very cognizant of that. And so I would just appreciate the attention to it. I appreciate the commissioners and the assistants, commissioners' assistants willing to provide some leadership and supporting our role in this process. So thank you.
And John, I want to make a follow-up comment because we've had a conversation about this, and you know, I made it very clear to John that sometimes staff has recommendations or advocates for something that I don't believe in at all, which I have no problem with. It's fine. I think the whole point of staff is to present another perspective on the issues. They're interveners in these cases, and that's the whole idea, is to get a range of points of views and then make some decisions from there. There have been some comments and frustration sometimes that what staff submits to a case is not as in-depth as we would like. And again, I have to come back to the resource issue, is that you can't get blood out of a stone. You need to be sure that what we're asking for somehow has some reasonable relationship to the resources available. And I know there have been some times where probably all of us have at sometimes said something in frustration that we wish it was more complete, or we wish it was more thorough. But quite frankly, given the resources we've got, the amount of output that staff is giving us is tremendous. And, you know, I think we just need to acknowledge that. And we need to acknowledge some of the limitations that they face. Unfortunately, to a large degree, they've been starved of resources through no fault of their own. And, you know, one of the comments I made to John was, sometimes when you feel like your testimony, you just don't have the resources to delve as deeply as you would like, it's okay to put a statement up front saying, this is what we had the resources to look at. And so this is where we're giving you our point of view. And we wish we could have gotten into some other areas, but we could not because of resource limitations. And that, you know, maybe if we, you know, just acknowledge that, we'd be less prone to taking, and this is a loaded word, but I'll just use it anyway, but taking pot shots unintentionally at a group that really is, considering their resource, putting out a lot of work and giving us a lot of output with very little resources. So I just want to acknowledge that we understand that, and I'd ask everyone, whether it's hearing examiners, OGC, commissioners, to be really aware of that and be sure that we're not unintentionally criticizing something where actually the effort given the resources at hand has been pretty darn good. So I just wanted to get that out there.
Yeah, I appreciate your support, Mr. Chair, and we are a group of devoted, hardworking people who've been here different lengths of time, and you know, we bring our experiences and our baggage along with it, and you know, we do our best job in trying to give you provide some solid testimony, and we recognize that sometimes you may not agree with it, and but, you know, you're 5 commissioners and you're different as well. And so we'll appreciate working with you and continuing to do our best. And you know, of course, we'd like to be recognized for that.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Maestas.
You know, although my tenure so far is very brief, it's become abundantly clear to me that we keep going to the staff well, and just, you know, asking you to keep doing more and keep doing more. And then there's been so many other events that are out of our control. For example, not having an office. And so I understand that morale is maybe not as high as it could be. But that's why I am front and center, and I know Jason will back me up on this. That's why I think we need to be as humanly assertive and even aggressive in calling attention to the situation. You know, before we call attention to the budget needs, we need to describe the situation And I think, Commissioner Hall said, let's show them the docket, just the extent of the docket alone. And they're well aware that, for example, the speaker during the course of my campaign was critical of the PRC. This was last year, and questioned why a rate decoupling rule had not been developed. And it totally caught me by surprise, and he directed it to me, and I was still a candidate. So that's why I'm working as hard as possible to really call attention to our budget needs and get some legislative action. We don't have the benefit that the cabinet secretaries and their deputies are, they're lobbying the legislature, and we are too. But let's face it, we don't have the lobbying infrastructure needed to really make a substantial impact in the outcome of legislation, particularly as it affects the budget from the PRC. And so I'm trying to change that paradigm. And, I think that's really, really important. Budget isn't everything, but that staff needs to have the proper resources to do their jobs fully. And so I was a mayor, and I knew that the governing body didn't run the city, it was the staff. When water pipes break at all hours of the night, or if there's a sewage backup, it's the staff, the city staff, that will go out there and fix it. And so our staff here at the PRC are the backbone of this organization. And I think we need to do all we can. I think consistent with what Commissioner Vicente Aguilar said, is that we need to be the facilitators. We need to listen, we need to empathize, and then we need to act. And so I intend to do that for the next 22 months. Maybe I should, just start counting months, days, hours, and minutes. But I intend to spend all of that time always being a champion for our staff. So I realize sometimes I may be a little critical at times about, for example, technical expertise in our discussion with respect to IRP review, but please know it's not criticism. I'm using it as a foundation to build up our technical expertise. So please never think that it's personal or targeted or critical. It's always thinking about the future and making the PRC, one of the best regulatory agencies in the country. So I just wanted to say that, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And John, just could I get back to the specific question? Does it feel to you like we're doing all we can to be sure that when we're addressing these passions and projects for the future that the commission wants to get into, that we're doing it in a way that's not throwing more burden onto you?
Commissioners and Mr. Chair, and I do feel like you are being sensitive to what staff can do to support you, and of course we'll try our best. And I think you're. So I certainly accept what you're saying. I don't see anything, and I haven't heard anything that is inconsistent with what I just said. So I do accept that you're sensitive to our obligations.
So my request to you would be that if we inadvertently are putting burdens on you as we pursue some of these commissioner initiatives, you need to be able to speak up and not feel shy about it.
Thank you,
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Vicente Aguilar.
This is brand new ideas for our staff members. They just learned about it. It's solid ideas. Can we give them time to give us a response? Maybe perhaps one or two staff members would like to give a written response. I think it's a little too much for John Reynolds to answer. He needs to work with his staff members to see where we are, which ideas can we achieve the next 20 months. I'd like the members' voice in the process.
Whoops, Commissioner, you're breaking up.
Oh, I'm
better.
sorry. Can you hear me now?
Much better.
Okay. What I said is that let's give John Reynolds and his staff a chance to review the ideas that we set forth, and they will come back and say, quite frankly, this will work and this one will not work. Can we give them a chance to think about it and allow them to give us a written response?
Absolutely. Okay. Let's move on to Ashley. I see your name here. Have you been listening in?
Yes.
Your thoughts?
Well, I guess I just have a general thought, which is that our initial input into this whole thing has been to identify the work that's currently in front of the commission, in front of staff, OGC, and the hearing examiners, everybody here, and to point out that that work really needs to get done. And that work needs to really deserve a priority, I guess. And that work needs to be adequately resourced. And that's been our focus in all of this. And listening to, all of this discussion, it seems like you folks have recognized that. And I think we all appreciate that and look forward to trying to make it all work.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, there's some background noise. Somebody's not muted and it's making a lot of noise, like paper rustling or something. Could you just remind people to mute?
I think you just did. Thank you. I was about to do that.
Well, there's one number, 660-1143, appears to be, it's got a yellow bar. So now it went dark. Maybe that's the only other one that was reacting besides Ashley. So maybe that was it.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Please, folks, remember to hit your mute. Anything else, Ashley, that you want to say?
No, that's it for now. Yeah.
Okay, appreciate it. And Mike, thoughts? And anyone from OJC?
So we're as our job is to keep pushing things towards the conclusion. So we'll continue doing that. I'll take the fifth on your sensitivity.
Well,
that's meant as a joke, Steve.
I was going to make a hand gesture, but I'm so slow turning off my video. Oh, now I'll make a hand gesture. Now I'm going to turn the video back on.
Mike, are you
Oh, turn it off. Turn it off.
Mike, are you trying the Mission Impossible and trying to humanize Steve Fishman?
I'll take the fifth again.
Uh-oh.
Hey, it's too early to start drinking.
Yeah. Okay, Mike, continue.
That's it.
Oh, you're just taking the fifth. All right.
He's taking a fifth.
Fifth Amendment of the Constitution, not the other kind of fifth.
No, Jeff, I think you just had the line of the day. So, Mike, while you're taking a fifth, do you have any other suggestions about how we can go about this to be sure that we're not adding additional burden to your group?
The commission's all interconnected. So, there's a lot of, they're all moving parts and they all connect. And so getting everything, as I said, to the end point is a team effort. And, there's a lot out there. and there has been a lot out there, as Ashley said. So, you know, we have to, I think, you know, we'll have to be realistic about what can be accomplished. I think there'll probably be some triage involved in terms of, you know, getting the things that can be done earliest done, which is, you know, the pending rulemakings. Certainly the ones that are pending are the easiest, or should rather, I should say, have the priority of getting done first. And then there are the ones that certainly need to be initiated as well, if we're going to try and achieve the goals that we've been talking about.
Agreed. You know, we really do need to, where things have lagged, we need to be sure we refocus resources on getting those things completed. And I think Commissioner Hall spoke to that earlier. If we start them, let's finish them, because there's no bigger waste of resources and effort than when you start and then you just let it die. And they were all started with good reasons. So, okay. Anybody that I have not checked in with from staff, OGC? Okay, sounds like we're cool. So here's what I would suggest for our next steps is commissioners have spoken to the projects they would like to work on. Brian and Jonas, I think what we should do is get out the notes on that to everybody. And what I would suggest is that on the projects that we want to work on, that we just lay out sort of a high level, each of us lay out a high level work plan for how we'd like to address it. Do we want to do a rulemaking? Does it exist in a current rulemaking? What kind of time frame do we have on it? What kind of steps do we need to take to meet that time frame? And that we can probably bring those back to a regular open meeting to discuss as we go along. So anyway, that's my initial thought on how to move forward on this. Any other perspectives are welcome.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman.
I'm going to start with Commissioner Vicente Aguilar.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. The objectives that I shared with everybody, I'm going to let my assistant handle it. We're going to go step by step, and I don't need additional. We will give you the signal when we would like for you to make a presentation, or if we would like for you to cover a topic, we'll give you enough time. So I think my assistant, Commissioner Byrd, and his assistant, I think we're all going to work together to accomplish the broadband planning. So I think we're okay, but I'll let everyone know when we need some help. But I think the starting point is laying out the plan. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, and then since you mentioned Commissioner Byrd, Cynthia, hang on just a second. I'm going to check in with Commissioner Byrd here.
Duly noted.
Okay, so basically you and Commissioner Vicente Aguilar are going to update us as you're ready. Commissioner Hall, I'm going to go to you.
Mr. Chair, I was just going to mention there were a couple of outstanding rulemakings that nobody vouched for. One is the fire marshal damper rule, and the other one is the electronic filings rule. And Maybe we should discuss among ourselves. It can be in this meeting or offline, I don't care, about, and in consultation with, I guess, General Counsel's office, what we could do to help and who could jump in on those two, because they're not spoken for and they're outstanding. I know fire marshal damper rule has been something that's been ongoing for some time. And I even heard in no uncertain terms from a legislator about what a bad thing that was. So not that that matters. I mean, that's what we're here for, among other things. I think it comes with the territory of being a commissioner. But, you know, I just wanted to mention those two, that's all.
I'm fine with following up offline. Judy or Russell or anyone from, or frankly, anyone from staff want to comment on those two items, whether there is anything we can do to help. And I think, I think the whole commission's kind of fed up with the fire damper rule. We can never seem to bring it to a close. I guess because it's so hotly contested. Mike, did you have a comment there?
So I was just going to comment on the electronic filing rule, which is, you know, we just had public comments, a public comment session, and it's being worked on right now. I think that's going to be one of the first ones out the gate. So
super.
Terrific.
Good.
And the damper, I don't know, Commissioner Byrd, do you have any recent intel on that?
The biggest pushback is from the unions. They're wanting to change the rules so that only union members can do damper inspections.
Okay. So that's what we're struggling through right now.
Commissioners, I think
that's the driver.
Okay.
Other than procedural status, I don't know that we should be getting into the substance of the pending rulemakings in this proceeding.
Okay. No problem. Commissioner Byrd, we snuck that in before you got to stop us. Thank you.
Anytime.
So with that, is any other thoughts about the next step? I would propose that for myself, I'd be ready week after next to have some timelines and just kind of basic thoughts about how I would be approaching the priorities that I laid out. Would that work for other commissioners for their priorities? Commissioner Hall, Commissioner Maestas?
You want us to give you a timeline of when we can get things done?
Just kind of a rough outline about how you'd plan to approach it and any timing. So just kind of a super high level thumbnail work plan.
Okay. Yeah.
Commissioner Maestas, does that work for you?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, terrific. And so with that, I'm just going to say thanks to everybody for the discussion. It always takes longer than we hope, but it's amazing how many things get clarified and simplified when we take the time to do it. And I just appreciate everybody pitching in and investing the time. And with that, if there's no objection, let's adjourn.
Adios.